I think that these videos are really interesting to make. I mean, these videos are about what games I've been playing this past month, so it's cool to see how each of the games I'm playing could not be more different than each other. It's also a way to introduce a clever limitation to my creativity. I have to talk about games I'm currently playing. Sometimes I have to talk about a game 2 months in a row and still make it appealing to an audience. It's also changed the way I play games now. I choose my games more wisely, and I take a deep dive into specific things I want to talk about. I mean, I love speaking my mind about these things, and it's why I'm still doing this, a third of the way through the year. I'm glad that through this, I can continue improving at writing and give these games not only my time, but a thorough look into what makes them good or bad. Most of the games that I played this month are games I've played before, so I'm delighted to finally have something to say about these games based on my previous experiences with them. Let's get right into it. Binding of Isaac is a game that tells a heartbreaking story about abuse, religion, and what it's like to have all the odds against you. It's a story about stories, questions, answers, life, death, luck, gambling, God, Satan, and then there's you. You start with nothing in an unfamiliar, dreadful, deadly basement, filled with monsters, flies, poop, explosives, and doorways that lead to curiosity. It is curiosity and intrigue that took me beyond that first room you start in. The map begins to open up like a web, introducing you to more things as you go, enemies that require you to cry and drown them with your tears, rocks that conceal keys, bombs, and shiny coins, and golden doorways. And that's when you encounter your first item. Items are the core of what makes this the godfather of roguelites. You pick them up, you see what they do, you might not even understand what they do yet, but you pick them up anyway and try your best to run with it. After hours of playing, you figure out the incredible and infinite number of combinations you can do with each item. Some don't really synergize, while others completely change your playthrough when you gather them. Over the course of almost a whole decade, over 900 hours of my life have been sunk into this game. I may not play it for a whole half year sometimes, but one thing is for certain, I always make my way back to this absolute masterpiece of a game. Thank goodness for the DLC, because they open up the game more and more. Repentance came out in about 2021, and good golly did I love everything about it. It essentially doubled the size of the whole game and made some really interesting permutations to the existing game formula. Tons of new areas, 2 new endings, 2 new characters, and actually 1 new character for each base character that already exists, flipping the game's core concepts on their head and adding a layer of extra challenge for those who dare to seek it. Like I said, it's been almost a whole decade of me just booting this game up to play it. How the hell do you play a game for so long, you may ask? I mean, the grind begins immediately and it never dulls out. At first, you'll be fighting an uphill battle with the hopes of defeating a final boss, and soon you will realize that every time you win, you're only opening that huge web to more potential unique and impressive experiences that the game has to offer. There's final bosses after final bosses, after final bosses, after final bosses, with side final bosses that have a chance to take you to more final bosses. So many final bosses, when does it end? Where's the direction? You make the direction. This game isn't finished so long as you haven't gotten all the 640 achievements in the game. I currently have about 490, but I'm getting there. I'm sitting here with 900 plus hours on the game and my dick in my hand because I really suck at this game. But sometimes, I get really lucky. My items synergize perfectly, making 4 explosive knives that heal me with their explosions, or persistent laser beams that wash over the screen in mesmerizing patterns, causing my 3060 to scream in agony louder than the enemies I'm decimating. I definitely lose more than I win, even 9 years later, but every so often I get a run that is so outstandingly perfect. Everything just clicks and works. The way certain combinations of items can completely change the trajectory of your run. Yeah, it sucks. Sometimes it can be luck-based, but 90% of the time, no matter what hand you're dealt, you could always try. A weird habit I picked up was that after a certain point in more than my 900 hours of gameplay, I began making judgment calls about how my run is going to go depending on what my first 2 items are, which is not something I recommend. My brain's basically found a TikTokified way to play the game, and if a run doesn't seem interesting at the beginning, I urge myself to give up until I find a run that starts strong, even if I realize nothing is going my way after things get harder. That's because sometimes in Isaac, if you get a slow run at the beginning, the game will make you feel teared down and essentially exhausted by all the extra work you'll have to put in to fight enemies that are way too difficult for you. And if you're tired by the game early on, you'll definitely be too tired to continue fighting later on, even if you manage to find some nice items that give you a leg up. Sure, there are some saving graces, but most times, I find it not to be worth the risk. It's crazy how much of Isaac's meta has become about whether or not I deem a run even viable from the get-go. The game itself has a lot of skill and strategy attached to it too, but so does everything else around the core gameplay. Which areas you decide to go through really matter, since they are what shows you how your runs are going to go. While it's basically impossible to see items before you get to their floor, minus the one item I know that actually does let you see items before you get to their floor, the enemies and stage hazards are different depending on where you go or where you end up. Runs that start in the cellar instead of the basement will have me groaning, because the cellar, while it may have some perks, has so many annoying enemies that I'd rather just hold the R key and just kind of, okay. In Repentance, the third DLC for this game, there's an alternate path you could take if you have a key on the first and second floor. This alternative path is really cool, packed with some new hazards, enemies, and an incredible unique look to it. Two really interesting things are this mirror and this white fire that I somehow figured out are entirely connected. Since you play this game so often through and through, you'll naturally get curious enough to interact with things that would normally hurt you, or accidentally stumble onto the fact that you instantly die to these white fires. Or do you? After stumbling into the white fire, if you somehow for some reason get the notion that you can walk through one of these mirrors, you'd be completely correct to guess this, and lo and behold, welcome to the mirrored version of your floor. Everything is flipped, otherwise exactly as it should be, except for one thing. The crown room will always have the knife handle, which is useful for when you pick this game up yourself right after subscribing to me. Okay, where am I going with this? Right. After optimizing routes and doing some quick research, I figured out that if you're willing to go through the mirrored world all the way to the boss room, you could fight the same boss twice on the same floor, once in the normal level and once in the mirrored one, to get 3 items on the floor instead of the usual 2. Of course, that is a lot harder than I make it out to be, since I cleverly left out that one little detail about the mirrored world, only allowing you to take 1 to 2 hits before you keel over and die. For more experienced players with some Isaac knowledge up their sleeve, this is definitely a go-to strategy, or maybe it's just a me thing and this whole section has been a waste of time. My point is that this game is filled with these tiny optimizations that you pick up as you go to make your own life easier. If you have flight and go through a spiked doorway, you'll only take damage on your way back through it, which halves the amount of damage you would normally have taken from it. If items are on the other side of a couple spikes and you'd normally need to damage yourself to grab the items, use a bomb explosion to push those items out of the spike trap instead. Like, oh my god, this game is awesome. It took me 5 years to figure out that pills reveal their names only if you've taken them previously in the run. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it felt good figuring that one out if you forget about the whole 5 years thing. Even if you restart at the very beginning of the game with nothing every time, you still have that knowledge that you didn't have before. Knowledge that you can leverage to put yourself just a bit further despite how hard things can get. Totally unrelated to anything I'm talking about right now, but I really have to mention how a certain part of the game that leads to one of the repentance endings is actually super silly. It's an awesome piece of Isaac lore the first time you go through it, but once you've done it once, you get to hear it every time thereafter. Hearing it over 100 times really makes it more of an ick than anything else. I mean, thank God people made some funny ass mods that shake things up a bit.
Just like his father. Look at who he has to look up to. And you're drunk again, aren't you? Shut up, man! Shut up!
The next part, and probably my favorite part about Isaac, is the sheer number of characters you could choose from. They each have their own gimmicks, from really impressive shakeups to the base game formula, to characters that only have a single heart but good base damage, to characters that have poop as their secondary item and cannot gain normal health. Something for everyone. Chill characters that allow you to speed through the game super quickly, characters that you need to study and get the hang of, and then the challenge characters for people who want to make the game even harder than it already is. The way the game urges you to try them all is, again, that intrigue. This time it's the intrigue of playing in a new way that you haven't done before. Azazel, and yes, I double checked, Google said Azazel, is a well-rounded but also slightly overpowered character that is really good for speeding through the early game, with a chargeable short-range beam attack and built-in flight. Magdalene is great if you need a lot of momentary healing but are willing to sacrifice your speed for it. The Lost, if you manage to get a hold of this rare character, gives you only 1 hit before you die. 2, if you find a permanent upgrade for this character somewhere in the game. While this character is unforgiving, and while others may seem unfair, there's more than just intrigue to incentivize players to keep trying to beat the game with everyone, in every way possible. Achievements. Like I said before, there's over 600 achievements to get in this game, and they're all really fun to get. But if they were just achievements alone, there'd be no extrinsic reason to get them. So for almost each achievement in the game, there's an item or character or a suite of enemies and bosses or even areas that it unlocks and adds to the massive entertaining web of things that exist in the world of Isaac. The game continues to expand with every single achievement that you grab, even if just a little bit. I come back to this game because this system is always rewarding me for my victories and reminding me to come back eventually after every loss. It's the core of the gameplay after you beat every ending at least once and experience everything the base game has to offer. This is what I have left to do after my 100 or so hours of playing Binding of Isaac. Have fun grinding out the achievements in this awesome game. I mean, I say grind, but it hardly feels like one. I still get those runs that get my blood pumping, my heart racing, my brain making all sorts of split-second decisions that put me forward, give me more time to live. I love this game, and if you need something to sink hundreds of hours into, this game is made for you. Everyone that I've recommended it to has really thoroughly enjoyed playing it, and still come back to it to have a roughly hour-long session every so often. This is especially one of those games that come in phases. You'll go an entire 6 to 9 months without touching this game, and then one day you'll go, why not, and get completely sunk in for a couple weeks or months. Do yourself a favor and pick up this masterpiece. Let me know if you found a seed that makes your computer blow up and paste it in the comments. I promised last month that I'd talk about this game this month. I'm happy that I decided to give it another shot so soon after beating the original game for the first time. Do I think that my opinion is swayed now that I've played the original? Definitely, but I'd say it was swayed in some pretty unexpected ways. I'm able to finally look at this game through a different lens, a lens where it's compared and contrasted against its original version. My verdict, if you're looking to play the definitive version of this game, one that accurately reflects the Resident Evil canon, has more fluid combat, and provides the most horror, you'll definitely prefer playing the remake. However, you should definitely choose the original if you're looking for a more dated, funny, and wacky experience that isn't afraid to just be itself and more expressive and flavorful with its banter and characters, and have all of its iconic moments hit especially hard since that's where they originated. The controls on the original may be a little clunkier, but that's what makes that version especially challenging and adrenaline heavy. In the remake, you don't have to worry about repositioning since the game instead challenges you in your ability to think on the fly, adapt to the situation, and use your knife at just the right time to parry oncoming attacks, while in the original you're challenged through your strategic positioning and repositioning, as well as your ability to control your accuracy in moments of stress. Or just use grenades.
Magnum opus of all my attacks is the grenade. Get destroyed, Krauser! Take this! And yet another explosive! And yet another explosive! And yet... Let's switch it up a bit. Let's throw a fire explosive! Oh, fuck! Let's throw yet another fire explosive! I don't think that really worked, did it?
The environment in the remake is completely refurbished, where in the original everything kind of seemed like a cloudy, gloomy day. Now the game transitions slowly from daytime to sunset to nighttime. As you progress through the game's first section, everything is so incredibly detailed, seeing the traps the villagers have laid everywhere is much harder. The castle looks incredibly menacing and absolutely stunning. The labs section is much more pronounced, darker. Instead of just looking drab and yellow, it's now got the flavor that makes the original's lab section seem like it's almost scary, unlike the remake where it's genuinely terrifying. Unfortunately, the fact that the lighting is now much more detailed has made way for a very large complaint, and it's that sometimes you just can't see shit in this game. In some areas it enhances the experience. We're wired to think that the dark is much scarier than the light, since we're not as aware when everything's dark. Everything's just way less visible. But this also means that some areas that clearly don't have any threats lying in wait are just dark and harder to navigate. In some places, sure, it adds to the atmosphere, but in other places, especially when backtracking, it can get sort of tedious, but that's just me. I feel there's a sort of trade-off with each version that makes them both unique and great games in their own rights. Even the story. I think the original story is memorable because of how wacky certain characters are, how silly certain scenes and lines of dialogue are, and how funny it can all really be.
On time, comrade. Krauser. I died in a crash 2 years ago. Is that what they told you?
You're the one who kidnapped Ashley.
You catch on quick, as expected. After all, you and I both know where we come from.
With the remake, you get a completely different vibe. While it calls back to those original lines and iconic moments, a lot of them are given a new, more grim and horrific undertone. A lot of story elements as well as gameplay were cut and repackaged in a way that makes it more modern, less messy, and more engaging to today's audience. They cut an entire boss from the base game, and while that probably would have upset me had I played the original first, they added it in anyway in the DLC of the remake, which didn't make it feel left out since the main story was allowed to be paced much better thanks to that boss being moved over to the DLC. What's also great is that because of the boss being moved over to the DLC, the remake's version of it became much more memorable. Ashley's section in the original was fine. I mean, I don't recall much about it except climbing under tables a couple times, avoiding some hecklers chasing me, and cranking a lever to open doors. Meanwhile, in the remake, it was the first time I was genuinely terrified by Resident Evil 4. It's a classic Resident Evil horror trope to introduce a threat, and then when you think it's over, cranking up the dial a couple more times until your blood begins to curdle and your eyes stop blinking. What a phenomenal section and amazing rework, having to travel through these dark, tight corridors with nothing but a dim lantern, hearing the clanging of metal on the floor as the possessed knights shuffle around. Then they crank it up a bit, a chase sequence, multiple of them chasing you in a closed room with a puzzle.
I am done with armor. Didn't I just say I was done?
And then cranking it up even more, taking the lantern away from you, forcing you to be even more aware of your surroundings, all ending with an exhilarating chase sequence all the way out of the area.
Okay. Be good nights and stay still.
Ramon's boss fight is one of the biggest differences when comparing the two versions to each other. In the remake, it's akin to an Elden Ring boss, except imagine you don't have a dodge roll, and I'm pretty sure you can't parry in this fight either. This is one of the only parts of the game where positioning is key in the remake. This is also the hardest boss in the game for me, but I loved every second of those 2 hours I spent grinding it on hardcore. I'm sitting here and comparing the two games because I think it's really hard not to. They're both products of their times and trying to be the same thing. Ultimately, I think that the remake resonates with me just a tiny bit more than the original, but I loved both experiences nonetheless. It's because of me playing Resident Evil 2 Remake last month that I even began replaying this game this month. Comparing it to Resident Evil 2 Remake, they almost feel like completely different games from each other. I think they're both trying to be different things. One is trying to be a highly replayable Metroidvania, while the other is more akin to a linear Zelda game, moving from one puzzle to another, one boss to the next. That doesn't mean that one of them is better than the other. It's hard to compare when both are trying to be completely different things. I'm just happy both of them are trying to be deliberately scary. I said last month that I originally was skeptical of Resident Evil 4 before I finally tried it out because it didn't have a tyrant or nemesis enemy, an enemy that stalks you and is invulnerable. It was a genuine nitpick I had, especially when they had Batoris Mendez look like such an imposing figure that looks so similar to Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. In one section of Resident Evil 4, he even chases you down to his boss arena, closely resembling the tyrant. His pure strength and large size made him feel like he was built to be something like that, so originally I was very upset, but then came the scary sections of the remake, and those emotions were replaced with a more positive opinion of the scare factor of this game, since a lot of this game's punches seem to be intentionally held back so that the element of surprise remains ever so surprising later down the line. Later on, not only did we get Ashley's stealth section, but we also got the Verdugo, which is incredibly hard to kill, but if you manage to do it, good for you. I mean, it was definitely terrifying the first time I encountered it. Its sheer speed is what kept me on my toes. You never know when a prompt will appear on screen to evade an attack. This is weirdly also where I finally began using knife parries. Coming directly from Resident Evil 2, I'd only use knives to get out of grabbing animations, but here's where I learned to prevent myself from even getting grabbed in the first place, all while honing my Sekiro skills. Who would have known that combat is immediately so much more fun with a perfect parry system? Moving on, I don't think anything could have prepared me for the lab section of the game. Nothing could have possibly prepared me for one of the final enemies introduced in the game, and the whole section revolving around them. They're lanky, alien, and so goddamn terrifying that I'll probably dread coming back to this section of the game every time I boot it up. This is actually kind of funny, but in the original, I thought that regenerators weren't all that terrifying. Just another enemy with a convoluted way to take it down, except the way that they're introduced in the remake is absolutely insane. I mean, the build-up is executed phenomenally. If you're as stupid as I am, you'll miss the fact that you can actually kill these enemies if you're able to find the parasites holding its body together. In the remake, they're faster, and they fucking slither too. Even after figuring out their weakness, killing one of these is an intense experience due to their increased speed and lankier movement. These regenerators aren't joking around. Back to that Resident Evil trope of introducing a terrifying section and then slowly cranking the dial even higher as you go through it. When I didn't know how to deal with this new enemy, they would start with one regenerator, and then once you've completed a puzzle, here's a second one, as if one wasn't enough. Hey, and now that I've done another puzzle, what's my reward? A third one. Wow, great. I was getting a good leg workout with how far off the edge of my seat I was. After a bit, you're forced to fight at least one, so if you haven't been actually trying to kill them up until that point, now you have to. Thermal visor gives you a big leg up in the fight, but now we're brought back to the old days, since positioning really matters. Plop yourself down far enough and you'll be able to take one of these foes down if you aim well and try to keep your distance. The remake makes their movement so much more expanded and unpredictable that shooting their weak spots is a whole other challenge sometimes. One that is so stressful to overcome that it's a miracle that I was able to get through that part of the game in the first place. I'm absolutely shilling the remake here. I think that it did enough to really stand out as not only a good remake for the original game, but an exemplary retread that builds upon the original vision rather than trying to erase it or replace it. For those sleeping on Resident Evil, I'm looking at my younger brother right now, you have to give it a try. Especially now that there are plenty of modern games in the genre waiting for you to try them out. While sometimes the dialogue can be a little cheesy, it's good cheesy, and the gameplay makes up for it. Thankfully, the remake also did improve the dialogue in most places, and while the cheesy moments still pop up from time to time, sometimes you really feel the emotion of the scene. Because of this additional attention to dialogue, you feel that over time Ashley begins to really trust Leon and starts to feel safe around him, whereas at the beginning she feels rightfully reserved and cautious around him.
Stay here.
What? Okay. Hey, Leon, there's some armor. Bet you could use it like a bulletproof vest.
Little old-fashioned for my taste.
These little details never had time to shine in the original game, and with the addition of better motion capture technology and facial tracking, the story was really positively impacted by the technology we have today. Spoiler alert, you have about 5 seconds to skip ahead.
Take it however you want.
The reason I even mention the story improvements in the first place is not because of the changes to Ashley's character, not the more realistic grim tone of the game now that it's beginning to take itself seriously, but it's how they handled Luis in this game. Coming back to the remake, I could truly appreciate the work they put into making this a truly lovable character. I have a confound appreciation for when games combine gameplay and story and try to provide a cohesive experience, leveraging the best of both worlds. In the original, Luis feels like a side character. He appears like 3 times, and then on the 4th time or something, he unceremoniously dies, completely randomly, by the way.
Did he just die? Bro.
And Leon acts like this was the most heartbreaking thing to ever happen.
Lois!
In the remake, we see a story developing. We get more from his point of view to better understand his situation. Not only is Leon given the time to trust him, but so are we sitting behind the screen. We get to have that extra time with him to ask him questions, figure out his motives, figure out that he likes to smoke cigarettes, and even figure out that Leon doesn't like cigarettes. Instead of dying early and out of nowhere, he helps Leon during the double El Gigante fight, tries his best to convince Leon he's on his side and that he just wants to help. He's apparently also an ex-Umbrella employee, which is something that causes tension between him and Leon, briefly, but again, due to the guilt he feels about the things he was a part of at Umbrella, he feels as though he owes it to Leon and Ashley to help them, even if he's being tugged on by an interested third party that is basically blackmailing him. There's so much intrigue to his story, and his character is so much more memorable, yet charming in such a funny way. Instead of being a ladies' man, he's more of a stumbler who thinks he's got it all, including the ladies, but he's just scraping by while the odds are all against him. His biggest strength is doing it with a positive outlook, a playful demeanor, and a smile on his face. So when he inevitably dies, it's heartbreaking. It's the only moment we get to see him be serious and real. His last words stick with you because he's made an active effort throughout the game to make sure he's changed and done good by his past mistakes. He tries to light one last cigarette, but he's out of strength. And without saying anything, Leon helps him light it, despite scolding Luis at the beginning of the game about smoking. They never said they were, but in his dying moments, these two were good friends, and not a lot needed to be said. The best way to end a story arc is to leave it on a question.
But now, eh? What do you think, Leon? People can change, right?
Luis wasn't sure if he did enough to change, and he died without ever getting the real answer. Of course he did. To us, we get to live on because he saved our ass many times, and it's because of him that we could save Ashley and ourselves. But to him, it still remained unclear in his final moments. And that's what makes his death so tragic. This entire section is really long at this point, but I feel like this game has earned it. The remake is one of my favorite games of all time. I love it to death, and I think you should too. The story, gameplay, and most importantly for me, the horror have all been greatly touched up and refined to the point where it not only distinguishes itself from the original game, but expands upon that vision in unexpected and exciting ways. It's an amazing achievement to have such a unique remake that doesn't feel like a retread, or like it overwrites the legacy that Resident Evil 4 left behind over 20 years ago. Having said all that, please play both versions and decide for yourself. They're both on Steam and unforgettable experiences in their respective ways. Now, I would have talked about this game last month if I weren't 1 month late to the party. Repo is a game that follows in the same extraction horror footsteps as Lethal Company, but it manages to really carve out its own type of unique style, and isn't afraid to be unexplainable, wacky, and really funny. In fact, these two games tackle horror and humor in very different ways. Repo feels like it was meant to be more funny than terrifying. Even hiding from enemies is hilarious as you hide next to your friends under furniture and have this wide-eyed expression that's absolutely priceless.
Hey, Stinky! Turn around!
He didn't even... I feel like this was an active attempt by the developers to lighten the mood in a specific way. Not as to ruin the horror, but deliver this horrific, humorous experience and approach to the genre that I think is clever and entertaining enough to have this not completely knock Lethal Company out of the park, but definitely sit side by side as a marvelous co-op horror game all the way. Lethal Company, however, is more about trying to find the humor in genuinely terrifying situations. In Repo, you're trying not to laugh because you die if you do. Everything is trying to make you lose your shit. Lethal Company is all about the story of it. When your friends die, they come back later and can explain how they hilariously died to a terrifying creature or a completely stupid situation. You watch your friends die to a creature in the most gruesome or tragic way possible, and you can't help but laugh because it's just a game and your friend just got shit on. Nothing better than that. There's no silly physics, and it's a lot simpler, and sometimes that simplicity is great. It's easy to pick up and play, to just get your hands dirty, and while Repo is sort of the same, Lethal Company did it first, and it did it incredibly well, and Repo trails a bit behind in terms of how simple it can be. You really have to get used to some of its systems, and while it's a relatively easy process to do so, it still takes some practice and a bit of patience. So does it dethrone Lethal Company? Again, I think it sits as a proper alternative. Both games are incredibly good. Lethal Company was made by one furry, while Semiwork is a group of developers. Lethal Company, I would say, is 66% terrifying and 33% funny, while Repo, on the other hand, is more of 75% funny and 25% scary, but both have their respective moments. Lethal Company puts the lore on the forefront, while Repo prefers to let players figure it out based on their environment mostly. Lethal Company barely has any physics-related gameplay, however, its unscripted scariness really works a lot of the time, while Repo wholly relies on its physics system for its gameplay to stick and be as humorous as it is.
How nice is this place? This was really nice. Whoa! Do not go down that hallway. I don't even know how to describe what that is.
What the daffy? Oh that's so fun!
You're my friend, right? You're not gonna hurt me.
Each of these two games stands as a monument of its genre, this genre of extraction horror, each offering their own unique twists. Both are worth your time, and both are absolutely hilarious and scary at the same time, just differing levels of either depending on which game you're feeling like playing today. Why do I keep comparing this game to Lethal Company though? Well, it's because Lethal Company was just about the biggest and most important game to release following the genre. It's one of the greatest extraction horrors to exist, and Repo attempts to follow in the same vein. It's only fair to talk about the game that's planning to stand neck to neck with it in comparison to the monument that came before it. Whether the development team took direct inspiration from Lethal Company or not, it's fair to compare them anyway because they're both games that blew up in the extraction horror market. What Repo definitely succeeds over Lethal Company is that it works really well when you play it alone. I play this game alone sometimes, and I find myself having more fun than I ever would playing alone in Lethal Company. Lethal Company is a much harder game. It's more brutal, and the game urges you with all its might to bring some friends along with you. While it's very possible to enjoy the game alone, it's much more difficult to get further into the game without a team behind you. Repo is a bit slower paced, and there's counters to each enemy, so instead of being underprepared, you can literally smack enemies around with anything you find if you really need to. And apparently if you're strong enough, you can just smack them around yourself. I've touched upon this earlier, but the robot designs for each of the players are so creative and expressive in the most unexpected of ways. The eye movements are insanely funny, the large gaping mouths that flap up and down when you speak. It's so comical. It's genius character design for something like this. This game is absolutely hilarious, getting smacked by accident or on purpose.
Try to see if you could put whatever's in it in your inventory after. Because in that case, it'll be really good.
No.
The trophy! The trophy!
Even crouching or rolling around looks hilarious and is really fun to do. I mean, they even made the death animations funny, like the exaggerated flash of red before your friends explode is priceless, especially when they're in the middle of their last words. An unfair advantage Repo has is the fact that it's newer. The enemies each have their counters, but sometimes they're very hard to read, they're hard to evade, and they're very alien since we've never had the whole year and a half or so to get used to all of them yet.
I might need... There's a thing.
Some enemies are just hard to escape even if you're playing by the book, so to speak. Because of this, the game becomes entirely about the slapstick element, and the best part is that it works just as well alone as it does with your friends, because it's hilarious to use grabbing to defend yourself from enemies of all kinds, smacking things through doorways, making them lose their value bit by bit, turning a corner with an item and smacking your friend right in the face and destroying it, them, or both.
The animal? Bro, can I not get zygoted on?
Where the fuck is it? Or did you get eaten? Where the fuck did your head go? Your head was somewhere here.
That is it for me, bro. This game is fucking ass.
Oh, you just keep dying, bro. It's so funny.
Carrying an item together and losing your grip just enough for it to crash onto the ground. Everything is built upon the physics of this game. And the best part is that it's one of those Tears of the Kingdom moments where everything just works.
I place this in my inventory. Oh, I fucking hate that.
I would put all sorts of things, big, small, fragile, strong, wide, thin, heavy, light, all into one basket for there to be absolutely no physics mishaps or glitches beyond my control. In a game like this, your physics need to be good, and good they are. Semi-work, if you're listening, you need to add a free-for-all only mode. This shit is almost more fun than the base game. Just grabbing objects and flinging your friends off the map, or smacking them with a hammer to make them explode, or even somehow accidentally dying to your own weapon, everything is so volatile here, and it's always funny.
What do you think about that now, huh? Yeah. Oh, I hit myself with it. Ay. I can't fucking, you're hurting me. Oh.
That'd be so cute.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Oh, no.
Oh my God. Do I get a crown? Give it to me. Yay!
You really want to approach me with this thing in my hand, huh? Yeah? Oh! Take the fucking trophy. Take it if you want it to. Oh! Oh, no! No!
The items you can get in this game, in and outside of this arena, are so much dumb fun. Like, why would I possibly need an anti-gravity field like ever? Except for using it on my friends to watch them fly away while I laugh a lot.
Bye-bye now.
You fuck. Did you kill me up? That is so.
The items in this game are all so much fun in their own ways, and not to mention the upgrades. Lethal Company definitely has a lot of fun and funny tools at your disposal, but nothing beats getting a stat boost that lasts you the whole game, and having them be an important factor in what part you play in a team dynamic, if you even care about something like that. Sprint speed is useful in a pinch, so is sprint amount. It's always fun watching the numbers on your screen increase with each upgrade, but man is strength important. If you're strong, you might not need to call for your clumsy ass friends to help you carry something expensive and heavy with you. If you can afford buying a gun, you might not even need sprint upgrades because you could just get rid of your enemies, or your friends. While Repo seems to have a lot of legs up in comparison to Lethal Company, there's quite a few things that knocks it down a peg and allows Lethal's strengths to show more prominently. Firstly, the lore is told a bit differently, mostly through environmental clues rather than logs and readable material. This may not be a bad thing, but it's very difficult for someone like me to get started on it, as the game is so keen on keeping players engaging with its systems, being on the prowl for any threats or future hiding spots, constantly scanning for items and interacting with the environment rather than really trying to piece one thing to another and get a cohesive story out of it. Another thing that really weirded me out about this game from the get-go is the extremely varied design of the monsters, characters, and environments. Again, something you can think of as exciting and good, but it leaks into the storytelling of the game by making it hard to understand why certain things are the way that they are and associating things with each other, like, what the fuck is this? And how could one enemy look like this while another can look like this in the same building? In Lethal Company, it was hard to believe certain things existed lore-wise, but then you got the actual logs to back that up, and there's some of the most interesting things to read in terms of game lore. Like, for example, the butler is a flab of skin worn by a group of wasps. Like, what the fuck? That is so goddamn cool. One of my biggest gripes probably stems from my time with Lethal Company, but damn, you move slow. Your stamina drains so quickly when you use it, and it regenerates very slowly. I mean, I understand why they did this, so players are more inclined to use the hiding feature, but what if you've already been discovered and are trying to find a hiding spot, or are backtracking through what is definitely safe territory? Now you're stuck slowly walking forward with the pace of a sad little snail, and at least that could make me shed a tear. This, nah. Even getting stamina upgrades seems a bit useless until maybe 3 of them. But overdoing it doesn't make sense either, since you could always just, again, hide to evade nearby enemies. Even though this is one of my biggest gripes, I feel like it is kind of unwarranted, and it's a little bit unfair considering maybe the game wants to be this sort of slow-paced game. And I think that's okay. However, not a lot of people have the same sentiment as I do. For example, when I was playing with my brother, the reason he left was because of the game's slow pacing. And that brings me to the next problem. I think the single biggest problem that this game has is the death system. While you're able to revive your friends, if you're only playing with one partner, they're going to be waiting upwards of 15 to 20 minutes to get back to playing, while Lethal had a timer that allowed players that are still alive to have to finish the run by a certain time. There's even an autopilot vote for when there's absolutely no way you're waiting 5 minutes to get into the game. Repo doesn't have any of that. You die, was it hilarious? Good. Sit with that for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes to get back into the game if you're playing with a smaller group. Oh, and that'll get even longer sometimes if they forget to grab your head or can't get to it for one reason or the other. Your time on a single stage is definitely a lot longer. There's no time limit, and while that's a great thing for people that are alive, and it's fair to have people sit out for a bit if they died somehow, for those who really want to play the game but just aren't too good at it, it's very unforgiving to have to wait so long. One time I was playing alone and I was stuck on one level for a very, very long time, about 40 minutes of hiding from a bunch of enemies that just wouldn't leave me alone. Compared to Lethal Company, this game has slightly worse pacing, and it can't really help it, or at least I don't personally see a way out for them. Adding a timer would take away from that quiet and careful planning and thinking that this game tries to force its players to do. Making each level shorter would take away from how many insane and hilarious moments could happen in each one. All the enemies are tuned for a much longer level-to-level experience, and untuning anything would make the experience less of its own thing and more like every other fast-paced horror game to ever exist. While this game has its imperfections, it's one of those games where you can so easily look past them because of how much fun there is to be had. I'm glad Repo is what it is, and while there are some design decisions that don't 100% sit right with me, I think that I love it for what it is, and I wouldn't change it, and I hope that's enough to convince you to pick it up and get a couple of friends to pick it up too. So I played Dragon's Dogma a bit this month, and I wish I'd played it more, but I accidentally dug myself into a funny little hole that had me waiting 4 in-game days to fail a side quest. I needed to keep an important character from going to prison, and to do that, I needed an extremely important eyewitness, so I took him along for the ride, and I just had to take him from one place on the map to another. So for the excitement value, I decided to take the road the slow way, and then halfway there, I logged off for a bit, came back on later, and forgot what quest I was doing, and forgot he was in my party. I went into a high-level mission completely unrelated to this eyewitness, and while he could defend himself from monsters on the main road pretty well, once I did this mission, it took about 3 hits for him to just croak. When he died, I realized I killed him, so I just kind of muttered, "Oh shit," to myself and let it be that. When it came to hand this last bit of evidence in, my eyewitness was rotting somewhere at the bottom of a well, and oh shit, you know what, I actually just realized that I could have gotten this really rare item. I think it's called like a wake stone or something, and it revives dead people, and I could have used it on that guy. Whatever, fuck it. Whatever's been done cannot be undone. I like that about this game because if I ever decide to restart it one day, I'll think twice before killing a quest-related NPC, and if it still happens again, I'll try my best to be prepared and use my little brain. Due to this eyewitness's disappearance, the dude got thrown in jail. Whoops. I mean, I guess it was meant to happen. I simply messed up. On this save file, I've managed to mess things up in ways previously unimaginable. I'm sitting on this plane writing this right now and thinking about what compelled me to try a lethal spell in the city square. This got me thrown in the dungeon, by the way. Now I know that this game is serious. Didn't fully understand it before, and now I do. I have to talk about this one again. People really seem to enjoy my commentary last time, so it'd be wrong not to quickly mention that I've now finally beaten the game for the first time, and I remember mentioning last month how creepy some of the game's parts are, flipping a switch and boom, it goes from mellow and happy to there's a brown tear running down my poor leg. But nothing, and I mean nothing, beats how absolutely isolating, dreadful, disgusting this final boss is. I knew Gigas was iconic, but I didn't realize how genuinely impactful the emotions are during this final fight. They simply flipped that switch one more time and ended the game on such a scary note that I'm pretty sure this is one of the most imposing and terrifying boss fights that I've ever had to go through in my life. It does the scary stuff on a whole other level. It's so weird, so unknown. The music, the visuals, the dialogue, the vibes, they seemingly remove you from wherever you are in the real world and just transport you from where you are sitting to this hellish, warped mess where the odds are against you. I was playing this game on vacation in my hotel room at night, and I was glued to my bed just based on the dissonant and repetitive synths playing over and over again while this face stared into my very soul, while it groans at me, calling the names of my main character, throwing attacks that are so inconceivable that the in-game text just tells me that I can't even imagine what attack this boss is throwing at me right now. With every prayer I called, I get a moment of reprieve, getting to see the characters that I've had the pleasure of encountering on my journey pray for my safety and deal damage to this eldritch nightmare. But then it's back to that stomach-churning screen with that fetus and that warped face. This boss, at its core, feels so alien compared to everything we've seen so far in the game, which is why it's such a jarring experience. So if you haven't played the game yet, there's a reason why I haven't gone ahead and just shown the gameplay to you with no commentary. I mean, that would be boring and mess with the long-ass runtime of the video as it is, but I implore you to try it out yourself, since I don't think many other game moments will beat that boss fight and how iconic it is. So, give Earthbound a try, and I promise you'll be incredibly delighted by the end of it. I think here's a good place to mention that this video was a bit late. I not only went on vacation so I couldn't do any editing, but I also got sick on vacation and I am still recovering as I'm writing this little conclusion. If any of the games here have convinced you to give them a try, don't hesitate to get them, and if you're still on the fence, it never hurts to try something new, so I'll always be urging you to play these games anyway. Tune in next month for when I hopefully have some solid Yappuccino as always. Until then, thanks as always for your wonderful support. Subscribe and join a stream of mine from time to time. I stream here on YouTube pretty regularly, so come and say hi and enjoy the cool little games we play on there. Take care and don't forget to brush your teeth.